Emma wasn't afraid of much. She was the kind of person who walked home alone at night without a second thought, brushed off ghost stories with a laugh, and always volunteered to check out strange noises in the attic. But there was one thing that had always unsettled her: mirrors. She couldn't explain why. There was no traumatic event, no childhood ghost story tied to it. It was just a feeling, a strange sense that the reflection staring back at her wasn't entirely her own. Over the years, she'd learned to ignore it, dismissing the unease as a quirky fear. But that all changed the night she moved into her new apartment. The place was perfect, modern, clean, and surprisingly cheap for the area. The landlord, a quiet, older man, had been quick to hand over the keys, his only warning being, "Don't move the mirror." She'd laughed it off at the time, thinking it was some kind of eccentric landlord rule. But when she saw the mirror, her unease returned with a vengeance. It was huge, taking up almost an entire wall in her bedroom. The frame was ornate, carved with strange symbols she couldn't identify, and the glass was unervingly clear, almost too perfect. She tried to ignore it, but every time she passed the bedroom, her eyes were drawn to it. Something about the way it reflected the room felt wrong. That first night, as she lay in bed scrolling on her phone, the mirror seemed to hum softly in the silence. She told herself it was her imagination, but when she turned off the lights, she swore she saw something move in the reflection. She stared at it for a moment, her breath catching, but it was just her bedroom, dimly lit by the glow of her phone. She shook her head and rolled over. "Get a grip, Emma," she muttered. The next morning, she decided to cover it. She wasn't about to take it down. The landlord had made a point about not moving it, but a sheet would do the trick. For a few days, things seemed normal. The apartment was quiet, her unease began to fade, and she even laughed at herself for being so paranoid. But then the knocking started. It was faint at first, just a soft tap-tap-tap that could have been the pipes or the neighbors. But it got louder, more deliberate. It always came at night and always from the direction of the mirror. Emma told herself it was nothing, that she was just imagining things, but by the third night, the knocking was so loud it woke her up. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. The sheet she draped over the mirror fluttered slightly, though there was no breeze. "Hello?" she called out, her voice shaky. The knocking stopped. For a moment, the silence was worse. And then the sheet fell. The mirror was bare now, and the room in its reflection wasn't her bedroom. It was darker, the walls covered in scratches and stains that didn't exist in her apartment. Emma stared at it, frozen, as a figure emerged from the shadows of the reflected room. It was her, but not her. The reflection wore a twisted grin, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. "Why did you cover me?" the reflection asked, though Emma's lips didn't move. The voice wasn't hers either. It was deeper, raspier, like it had been clawing its way out of a throat that didn't belong to it. Emma scrambled out of bed, her eyes never leaving the mirror. The reflection stepped closer, though Emma herself didn't move. It pressed its hands against the glass, and for the first time, Emma noticed the scratches on the inside of the mirror's frame. "I've been waiting so long," the reflection said, its grin widening unnaturally. "Do you know what it's like to be trapped here? To watch you live my life while I stay stuck." "Who are you?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. "I'm you," it replied, tilting its head further, almost as if it would snap. "The real you." The mirror began to vibrate, the symbols on the frame glowing faintly. Emma backed away, grabbing her phone to call someone. Anyone. But the screen wouldn't turn on. The reflection laughed, a cold, hollow sound. "You can't run," it said. "The deal was made long before you were born." Emma turned to bolt out of the room, but the bedroom door slammed shut on its own. The air grew heavy, pressing down on her chest. The reflection was now pounding on the inside of the glass, its fists leaving cracks that spread like spiderwebs. "You're out of time," it hissed. With one final blow, the mirror shattered, the sound deafening. Emma shielded her face from the shards, but when she looked up, the room was empty. The mirror was gone. The frame, the glass, the symbols, everything. It was as if it had never been there. Emma blinked, her mind racing. She grabbed her phone, and this time it worked. She called her best friend, barely able to explain what had happened. "I'm coming over," her friend said, her voice full of concern. "Just stay out of the bedroom." Emma hung up and sat on the couch, trying to steady her breathing. But when she glanced at the hallway mirror by the front door, her blood ran cold. Her reflection wasn't sitting on the couch. It was standing behind her, smiling.